You know, Oregon State Police and Salem Police say they will remain on alert this week in case larger or more violent protests develop in the days ahead.
OSP says it is aware of rumors that armed groups are considering taking over the Capitol. But of course, this leads us to ask why. Joining us live this morning to answer that question is professor at Lewis and Clark University, Ben Gaskins. Ben, thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so, okay, question here, because we saw an attempted insurrection at the nation's capital earlier this month. It was ultimately unsuccessful, and since then we've seen this huge increased military presence and security presence ramping up in the days leading up to the inauguration here. Why do you think these protests continue to happen, and especially at state capitals around the country?
Well, I think it's easier for protests to access state capitals. One of the things we saw on January 6th was this really coordinated effort to go to DC for a specific purpose and a time and place. And it is much more easier for protesters and groups from around the country to be able to be seen and heard, to get their message out, whether that's in support of President Trump or for a variety of other causes. And this provides a moment where the media and the world is holding its breath. And so it gives a lot of air to these protesters so that their message can be heard, so that they can be seen. And, you know, spreading out across the country kind of guarantees that they will be seen and heard, which is ultimately the goal of the protests themselves and the protesters.
Okay, so what impact, if any, will these protesters have on the incoming presidency?
It's to be seen. It just depends so much on the nature of the protests, on how extensive they are. We already saw that the protests of 2 weeks ago on January 6th have really changed the inauguration. It's changed how the country has seen President Trump. His approval numbers have really tanked since then. And so protests matter, especially ones that are large scale, that really shock the conscience of so many people. And so we'll see whether there are these wide-scale protests, if any of them get violent. That can really set the stage for what incoming President Biden is trying to do, is trying to say his message of unity. And ultimately, I think how the country sees outgoing President Trump and incoming President Biden, a lot of this uncertainty, I think, is really playing into how the country is feeling about the moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of that uncertainty is certainly taking up a lot of the oxygen in the room right now. We're seeing a lot of attention on the inauguration and on the incoming administration. But I'm curious, what is ahead here for President Trump over the last few days of his presidency, and how does his future play out?
Well, it's certainly atypical for presidents. He's been lying low. We haven't heard much from him. Part of that's because he's no longer on Twitter and social media. But a lot of the ceremonial aspects of the inauguration, the change in power between an outgoing president and an incoming president, President Trump doesn't really seem to be interested in taking part in. We haven't seen those high-profile meetings between Trump and Biden, and it seems that President Trump is going to leave D.C. on the morning of Wednesday and head to Florida, and from then we don't know what the future holds, but it seems like there's not going to be that traditional ceremonial handover of power. But I think Trump, as well as the rest of the country, is wondering what is going to happen next, what legal issues he may be facing. And so we'll have to just kind of see if he remains a force in politics, or if he has to kind of go back and figure things out for a while.
There has been talk this week about him doing a last round of pardons and how he probably won't pardon himself. I didn't realize that's something a president could actually do. I mean, obviously that's never been attempted before, right?
Right, and that's something that legal scholars, constitutional law scholars are really pondering, whether or not that is something that is even constitutional. We've been hearing that he has plans for as many as 100 pardons and commutations tomorrow. And so everyone's kind of left wondering and uncertain who is on that list. Are they high profile, low profile? Do they include members of his family, Rudy Giuliani, or even himself? And again, it's unclear whether or not he can constitutionally pardon himself. And that's, again, an unknown going forward if the president does face any legal ramifications for anything that has happened before he was in office or during his term, will the courts uphold a self-pardon? But ultimately, it's getting a little ahead of ourselves. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow, but there's certainly still plenty of time for some of these unprecedented moments we've seen over the past 4 years to continue, and to really continue to baffle scholars and lead to a lot more discussion going forward.
Yeah, a lot to watch this week. Ben Gaskins, professor at Lewis and Clark University, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.